Welcome into another edition of Pete's Pigskin Preview, presented by Walk-On Sports Bistro. I'm Neil McCready. That is MPW Digital football expert Pete DeWeese. It's been a minute since we previewed the Egg Bowl on the day after Ole Miss lost to Arkansas. It's been like 3 weeks or so. So getting you ready today for Ole Miss and Texas Tech in the Tax Act Texas Bowl. Tax Act Texas Bowl in NRG Stadium there in Houston, December the 28th, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. It's the Rebels and the Red Raiders. We'll talk about the Red Raiders offense primarily here on the show. We might touch a little bit on their defense. There's another topic I want to get to with Pete here in a moment. But first, I want to tell you that we're brought to you by Walk-On Sports Bistro. They put everything they've got into bringing you game day with the taste of Louisiana. Dig into their mouth-watering, made-from-scratch Louisiana cuisine, po' boys, gumbo, voodoo shrimp, the ruby redfish. Had that last Saturday in between soccer games. Fantastic. You can also enjoy fan favorites like juicy burgers, fresh salads, 70-plus TVs, more than 40 ice-cold beers on tap. Order online at walkons.com or on their very convenient Walk-Ons app. If you're in Oxford this holiday season, if you're in Ridgeland, please make sure that you stop by one of those locations and tell them how much you appreciate them sponsoring Pete's show and all of the MPW digital content. Pete, how are you?
I'm great. Glad to be back and doing this again.
All right, we'll get to Texas Tech and Ole Miss in a minute. Speaking of Texas Tech, one of their former coaches, Mike Leach, most recently at Mississippi State, passed away on Monday night. Our thoughts and condolences to his family, to his friends, to all of the many people who were touched by Mike Leach over the course of his 61 years. I had a question. I was thinking about something. There's been a lot of talk about his impact on college football, and obviously it was profound. What he did with Hal Mumme at Kentucky, took that on the road to Oklahoma as an offensive coordinator, to Texas Tech, to Washington State, and most recently to Mississippi State. But I was thinking about how it wasn't that long ago, really, in the scheme of things, that if you went to a high school game, even in a state like Georgia or Texas or Louisiana, it's a whole bunch of I formation, some wing tee, hell, some wishbone. It was what coaches knew, right? It was the one thing they could kind of teach. They ran it. It didn't really translate to the college game, but it worked at the high school level, and the coaches knew it, so that's what they taught, and that's what they did because they wanted to win, obviously. And over the years, and again, we're not talking about 50 years here. We're talking about 10, 15, 20 years. You saw a lot of passing schematics come into play. The high school game changed. And I think if you trace it back, and please, Pete, tell me, no, Neil, you're wrong, and then we'll get on with the Texas Bowl. But I think a lot of it can be traced back to Mike Leach and Hal Mumme and those guys with the air raid and a lot of air raid principles, that it's not a super complicated offense, and high school coaches, I'm not insulting high school coaches here, but they don't work with elite college talent. You get what you get, right? You hope you get a bunch of good kids, and you hope that a bunch of kids who care, but if they're not a whole bunch of athletes, you can't exactly go, hey, man, I need you to run faster. No, he grew up in the damn district, okay? That's who you got. But you're able to teach that, make it work and stuff like that. And I think if you look at the progress of high school football, I think a lot of it can absolutely be traced back to Mike Leach.
Without a doubt, I think not just in certain regions, but throughout the country, you will find that most high school football coaches will tell you that Mike Leach's impact on the game of football at our level, as well as up the ladder all the way now to the NFL, was profound. I mean, the funny thing is, like, very little that they were doing in that air raid offense that Mike Leach and Hal Mumme and these guys put together was new. A lot of it was stuff that Leach had taken from Lavelle Edwards and Norm Chow at BYU. And it was about how he found the way to do it. It was the way that they crafted their system, and it was how they taught it and how they repped it and how they drilled. And one thing that I think set them apart And one of the things that set Leach apart, just in general, um, he wasn't hiding it from people. It was probably 2005 or 2006 when I first got my hands on a PDF of an air raid playbook. Um, and started trying to learn some of it myself. And you look at the state of Kentucky. I mean, when those guys that came to Georgia, Valdosta State, in and out fairly quick with great success, jumped to Kentucky, made an imprint in the state of Georgia. But when they got to Kentucky, they really changed the way that high school football was played throughout that state. Suddenly, everybody, and it was because of the access, the willingness to share, the open nature of Mike Leach and the rest of the guys on that staff, and it completely overhauled football in the state of Kentucky. But it wasn't just there. As he goes to Oklahoma and then to Texas Tech, it just continues to grow. And you can walk up to any offensive football coach that's over 30 years of age and say, hey, what's 6 mean? What does 92 mean? What does 95? And they're going to tell you. And that is exactly what Mike Leach was calling it in the Egg Bowl just a few weeks ago. And, it's I enjoy watching them play, and I'm not in that system, but I've studied the system, and I love watching him play because his signals, and he's talking as he's signaling, I can tell you what they're running. Like I may not know the exact in and outs, but just, he literally holds up 6 fingers and he's telling the quarterback, we're running 6. That's our 4 verticals concept. And he does this, and he's telling you early and late, he's telling you the formations that they're running. And so many people have gotten in on that offense because he never really tried to hide it. Keep a few secrets, sure, right? But there was always information there. And because it became so teachable, I mean, Tony Franklin, that was in that system, turned it into an extremely profitable business, where he sold his system to high school coaches. And so the air raid really just took off. But Mike Leach, for a long time, he was the champion. He was the guy in front that, as Hal Mummy, ended up at Millsaps, right? Leach was still climbing and ascending. And so I would venture to say that in my lifetime, and in particular in the lifetime of my career now in almost 20 years, I can only think of 1 or 2 other people that might have had a similar impact on coaching at the high school level. And that's, again, just his imprint throughout the landscape of football is of such great magnitude. And obviously you guys see what reporters are sharing and players and different people, and you see Kiffin and these guys. I can tell you, because my timeline on Twitter is filled with high school coaches from around the country, and my network of guys that I'm in group chats with, hearing those guys and their stories about their times that they've spent with him, an opportunity they've had in the way that he opened their doors to them. Certainly the game lost a very unique but a very important ambassador.
Because not all college coaches love hanging out with high school coaches.
No.
Some will do it, but they get to, they're too big for this and stuff like that. And Leach, according to everyone I've ever talked to, was not that guy. He kind of liked hanging out in high schools and talking to people and seeing what was going on and asking questions and walking around field houses and looking at stuff. He just was kind of that guy.
My impression of him, and he's not anyone that I ever met in person, but my impression of him, based on all the things that I've heard and read throughout the years, he's a guy that had to work hard to get where he got, right? And he was intrigued and open to people that were working hard and to anyone that might teach him something. And regardless of what it was about, if you were working hard, you were trying to better yourself, you were open to learn. And I think that was a big thing. When people came to him, they came to him to learn. And because he appreciated learning so much, he was reciprocal of guys like me that would go in an effort to learn. But I also feel like, some people, they as much as they like to learn, and no matter what you go to them for, they're going to try to learn something in response. And I think that's kind of who he was to some degree.
All right, let's talk about one of his former teams, Texas Tech and Ole Miss in the Tax Act Texas Bowl. It's not the game Ole Miss wanted to be in. Certainly at 7-0, no one. If I'd said Ole Miss is going to the Texas Bowl, you'd have been like, "Come on." Even at 8-1, you just said no. They're doing better than that. And they were a win away from going to Florida and probably playing in the Citrus Bowl. But here they are in the Tax Act Texas Bowl against Texas Tech. Texas Tech sold a bunch of tickets. They're excited. Ole Miss has not sold a bunch of tickets. They're not super excited. On the field, though, should be an interesting matchup. I think Ole Miss is a 3-point favorite. Tell me about the Red Raiders.
They're an interesting makeup, even from their staff standpoint. A head coach that very recently was a high school coach with one of the more successful high school programs in Texas. Earned a lot of respect for what he did in that program. Had an opportunity at Baylor, and in his fairly short tenure at Baylor, served in 2 or 3 different roles, coached on both sides of the ball. But had a name for himself in the state of Texas, and obviously showed at Baylor what he was capable of doing at the college level. And so Texas Tech gave him a shot, and how he built his staff, I think, is interesting. His defensive coordinator is a longtime college football guy that has been a head coach. Tim DeRuyter was if I think I'm saying that right, he was the head coach at Fresno State. He has been around. He was at Oregon as the defensive coordinator. So he's been around quite a bit. He's coached some very good units, and is obviously experienced in a lot of different ways. The flip side of that, offensively, he goes to one of the youngest, sharpest coordinators in the country, a guy that is literally from Lubbock, whose father was in the athletic department at Texas Tech, and a guy that had been a student assistant and then a GA at Texas Tech, and then kind of under of course, a Leach disciple, and then in Cliff, and then had moved out of, I believe, Houston Baptist, where he was dynamic on offense, moved from there to Western Kentucky, and then after a short and explosive stint at Western Kentucky, right now back to Texas Tech. And so, one of the interesting things about them defensively, you are going to see a lot of different looks. They are going to play a lot of cover one principles. It's not dissimilar from the things you've seen this season out of Auburn and out of Alabama and out of LSU, what they're trying to do schematically. Are they doing it with the same athletes that those programs have? Maybe not. They're pretty. I mean, I watch their defense. I'm like, man, that Jugger, he's big, he's long, he can run. But they are a defense that's given up points. I mean, they haven't exactly been dynamic, I think, as a unit defensively. And so, there have been some games they've played better than others, but they've been in some shootouts. But their offense is ultimately what I think makes them go. And so the roots of what they do is the air raid, but it is in some ways, it is the Mike Leach air raid that you watched a few weeks ago in the Egg Bowl. And in some ways it is drastically different. It's kind of become this very smart hybrid. So what I thought we would kind of look at tonight is I watched the last 2 games of their season. I watched the Oklahoma game, which was like a 51-48 shootout.
It was an overtime game, right?
It was an overtime game.
Yeah.
And then I watched the Iowa State game, which was the week before. And then earlier in the season, I looked at some of their TCU game. That was a close game until the fourth quarter when TCU exploded for 21 points and pulled away. And I watched those games for different reasons. Watching one, a little bit of Oklahoma's offense, because Ole Miss is familiar with what Oklahoma and Jeff Lebby tries to do offensively, how he attacked the Texas Tech defense. But I kind of focused and settled on this Iowa State game, and in particular the matchup of the the offensive unit for Texas Tech versus the Iowa State defense, because Iowa State plays the 3-high, 3-2-6 defense. It's where Ole Miss went to learn the roots of this defense. And it was it was a cold night. I can tell you that just by looking at it. I can't tell you much else about the weather that night, but it was a low scoring game. I think it was 14-7, 14-10. So I wanted to see, how does Texas Tech attack a defense that is similarly structured to this Ole Miss defense. And so that's kind of where I thought we would focus a lot of our energy tonight. Okay. So I'm going to kind of jump around to a couple different points in the game, but this is actually the start of the game. Now, this game is in Iowa. Of course, it's not Neil's favorite place in Iowa, but it is, of course, in Iowa.
It's very nice people, lovely town. It's not Iowa City, but look, Ames has its charm.
Ames is nice. They are lovely, corn-fed people in Iowa.
They are.
So one of the things that a lot of people like when they study last year's Western Kentucky offense, this year's Texas Tech offense, they do a really good job giving you some interesting formation variations, giving you motions, all to run their base stuff, but to try and get you moving and thinking in different ways. So, one of the things that they do is they come out again. How is Iowa State in their 3-2-6? How are they going to adjust the back end? That's what we've seen all season with the Ole Miss defense, is how do they adjust the back end of the defense to fit the run and handle the different looks, however the offenses are choosing to create gaps. So what Iowa State does is actually what Texas Tech does is they come out in an unbalanced set. So both of these receivers to the bottom of the screen, they've got 3 receivers to the left, 1 H-back to the right of the offense. Because there's no tight end on the line of scrimmage, both of the outside receivers to the left have to be on. You've got your 5 linemen plus 2 outside receivers to give the 7 mandatory players on the line of scrimmage. So this number 2 receiver, the guy in the middle, is actually ineligible. The number 3 receiver, who is off the line of scrimmage, is still eligible. If you play 2 over 3 or 3 over 3, they are going to throw bubble screens outside to this guy all game long. What Iowa State chooses to do is put 4 defenders over these 3 receivers, which of course lightens the run box now for the offense. Now, I have not been blown away by Texas Tech's offensive line, especially in the run game. But where I talk about this being a version and having been birthed from the air raid, this is a team that wants and is willing to run the football. Looking at it real quickly, they average almost 40 rushing attempts a game. And some of those come late in the games where they've been up. But even in this game and in the Oklahoma game, they are still trying to run the football. Now, they were not always overly effective at the quarterback position this year. They played 3 different guys. One's in the portal. The quarterback you see in these clips is the guy that started the last 2 games. He's the guy that I anticipate Ole Miss seeing primarily in the bowl game. Number 12,
Schaus.
Senior, Schaus. So he's who I expect to see. Okay. And so he does some good things on film. Not great from an athlete. He's not a big runner, right? He can run some, but that's not really what they want to do. So they're going to use him in a lot of RPO game when they do want to run the ball. So here they're going to do something. And I'll be honest, a lot of the things that they do are really close to what you see Ole Miss do offensively, which I think that's an interesting part of this matchup. Is there's some similarities in how the 2 teams want to attack. Ole Miss is more diverse in the run game, but some of their usage of other things is there's some similarity. So they're going to run a zone to the right of the offense, and they're going to bring the H-back around for the backer. The quarterback gets the math and knows right now, because they have 4 over 3, that he needs to hand this ball off. If the box numbers look differently, instead of running the traditional screen that most teams run, they're actually going to run a slant with this inside receiver and give the quarterback an easy RPO read to start the game. They'll do quite a few things from these kind of unbalanced and oversets where they try and stretch how you're going to fit things defensively. And you can see the stress that it puts on this 3-2-6 that Oklahoma or that Iowa State is running. They force you to get those overhang defenders. They force you to stretch the safeties, and then they force the ball back to where those players have been removed, and it turns into a pretty easy 4.5 yard gain for the offense. So I would anticipate seeing some funky oversets, things like this. I think you'll see bunches out wide and stacks out wide for the same reason, to try and manipulate both the box structure and the safety structure. You can see right here, it doesn't play out cleanly because of the movement of the defensive line. And I do think that is one thing that will be key for Ole Miss's success in this game. The more I see the teams move their front and stunt the defensive line and maybe bring pressure from different spots, the more I see the offensive line struggling to handle it. So I hope and anticipate seeing a lot of movement, much like you see here out of Iowa State's line. You see them slanting number 9, the right side end, and it really, could have been a much bigger play, but because of the active nature of the front, they're not able to sort it out. The ball ends up having to bend back just a little bit wider, ends up kind of saving the defense a couple of yards. Okay. Now, fast forward 2 plays, they end up losing a couple yards on second down and end up in a 3rd and 8. So now this is where the air raid routes really come out. Okay. This is a day one staple of the air raid that is just 6. That is what Mike Leach would call it, 6. It is a 4 verticals concept. Okay. When you're in a 3-by-1 formation like it is here, you've given landmarks to your receivers. So your outside receivers are going to work a landmark on the bottom of the numbers. If they can outrun the corner, they are going to stay on that track and they're going to stay vertical. If that corner turns and bails to take away anything over the top, he's going to push to his assigned depth, probably 10 yards, 12 yards, and he is going to snap his route off and he is going to give his numbers to the quarterback, and it just becomes like a simple stop route or comeback route. Your inside receivers operate off similar rules. Because they're in 3-by-1, the base way to do it is the inside receiver, the number 3 guy, is going to be working to the opposite hash as his landmark, with the ability to bend it and stop in any hole once he clears the sticks. And at the same time, this number 2 receiver, the slot receiver, is going to be working right outside his hash with a similar rule. If he feels like his defender is bailing out of there, once he gets to the sticks, he's just going to stop and have the ability to show his numbers to the quarterback. So from a quarterback perspective, right, they're teaching him his progression. It could be based off of coverage. It could be based off of how the play is called. But he is going to isolate a defender and then scan away from that defender. And if at any point he sees a free runner vertical or a defender that's bailing deep, he is going to try to take advantage and just put the ball basically where that defender has left the voided space. So you can see here, you're actually going to see, I believe, the slot receiver, the second guy in their trips to the right, is going to push to the sticks. And you'll see as the safety gets depth, he's simply going to put the brakes on and try to settle for the first down. Okay, boom, puts the brakes on right there, comes back to the ball. Now, they got, on this particular play, they got Iowa State to jump. He knows the nose is offsides, so he sees a one-on-one to the outside and he takes it because he knows it's a free play that he's going to get to turn around and replay the down. Otherwise, I would be willing to bet that they would prefer, he's not going to work down here to the boundary because he sees 2 over 1, right? You've got a guy that could potentially be bracketed. So he's going to be looking for this crosser to this seam in most scenarios. And right there, what they probably would like to have seen him do is take the slot receiver right now as he settles down, throw that ball on his outside shoulder, and Texas Tech has a first down to change the movement. But I think because they jump here he goes ahead and he takes the shot. They have multiple variations of this exact concept that they will run. They will switch the outside guys, keep the same rules, all the structures the same, but now you've switched guys from the line. They'll switch the two inside guys where he becomes the crosser, and the third guy now works up the near seam. So they have the ability to be very versatile in this one concept. This is a bedrock concept of what they do. They probably have 4 or 5 different ways they will carry this into every game, and they are going to run them all. They will call this on 1st and 10, but if you get them in 3rd and long, it is a big part of who they want to be as an offense. And I'll actually show you another variation here in just a few minutes. Okay.
Lane Kiffin would not be happy with the crowd here.
No, he would not. They're standing. I'll give them that. At least some of them are. But you can see here in this scoreboard shot, it is not exactly a packed house. And I would not say that this group looks overly enthused.
They're cold.
They are just a little bit chilly. And, of course, we know Lane doesn't exactly love that either. So here they come out. They get a pretty traditional 3x1. It's very similar to the trip set I showed you a minute ago, except now you have to be able to communicate and recognize, and it's not hard, but this slot receiver is now eligible. They've moved the H-back onto the line of scrimmage as a true tight end. So now you actually have 3 you have to cover. And again, the defense has chosen to cover it with 4/3. So again, they're going to give him a very simple RPO read. He's got numbers in the run game. He's going to hand the ball off. I would anticipate seeing a lot of these trips type formations to try and make Ole Miss show their hand defensively. The other one that I think you would see would be when they actually take this tight end and instead of putting him away from the trips, move him here and putting him to the trips. Ole Miss saw a lot of that down the stretch because LSU absolutely gave Ole Miss fits from that formation. And so that's, again, another one. Keeping the same structure and the idea the same, right? If Ole Miss puts 4/3, they're going to run the ball. If they put 3/3, they're going to, they're going to play based, if the safety's deep, but it's 3/3, they're probably throwing it out there. If Ole Miss is down playing man-to-man, then they're not going to RPO. They're going to take shots out of that, and they're going to try to take advantage of the one-on-one matchups. But I anticipate seeing a lot of these 3x1 type formations out of Texas Tech's offense, okay? They are, again, for a team that has air raid roots, they do some very interesting things in the run game. They're not great at it. I mean, we're talking about they're averaging 39.8 attempts a game and only 152 yards. They're not exactly killing it in the run game. Okay, their leading rusher on the season, they've got a guy at, I think, 670 yards, a guy at 601 yards. So they've had some success, right? But they are not the most dynamic run game that Ole Miss has seen. But they'll do some things again with some nice little wrinkles. So I'm going to go ahead and skip to the end zone shot of this one. So here, Texas Tech has they've loaded their backfield, so they're still in the shotgun. If I can get this to load, so they've got 2 backs, one on either side of the quarterback, and they have an H back to the right of the offense. Okay, out to the left they have 2 receivers, so it's technically another unbalanced formation. Iowa State puts 3 guys out over the 2 receivers that are to the left of the offense. So what they're going to do here is they know right now that they have numbers. Now, if I draw a line straight down the center of the offense, the formation structure tells you that the defense is going to have numbers to the offense's right. To the left, because you've got the 2 receivers out there, you're banking on having the math in your favor as an offense, especially when you pull offensive players over to get to what you want. So what they're actually going to do right here is they're going to lead with their tailback on the overhang safety, and then they're going to block down on the front side, and they're going to run counter. They're going to pull a guard to kick the end, They're going to pull, I believe, the H back for the linebacker, and they're going to hand it now to the tailback, following his essentially what's become his 3 lead blockers. So they've gained the math by both formation and by structure of scheme. They're cracking on the safety, they're pushing out. And if they handle this any better, they gain yards. It's a 15-yard run here. If they handle it any better on the front side and the ball can hit right here, he's one-on-one with the safety for a big gain. Iowa State's able to string it out a little bit. The corner tries to turn it back in, but they pop that. This is an offense that's backed up on their own 4-yard line. They pop it for 15 yards, and it's a scheme they came back to a handful of times in the course of this game because, again, it is a formation against this defensive structure where you have to make a decision defensively, and then they're going to use the actual run scheme of what they're doing to attack you. This next one is one that they used a ton of variations at Western Kentucky last year. This has become one of the more popular things to do in the NFL. Again, it is something we have seen Ole Miss do. It is something we have seen several teams do this year. But they're now presenting, again, it's another unbalanced set. They have a tight end and a wing or H-back to the right with 2 receivers also to the right, okay? So, again, they're trying to stress the defense. How many guys are you going to put out over my 2 receivers? And then they're actually going to take this wing and motion him out. And all the quarterback has to identify is, does the picture change? Right now, they're 3 over 2, and one of those guys is about 8 yards off the ball. When that tight end motions out, if no one else comes to join the party, you are throwing a fast screen to your outside receiver with 2 blockers, and you're one-on-one with the safety that's lined up at 8 yards. If anything about that picture changes, if this safety widens out, if a linebacker widens out, if a corner tightens down, he is safe to hand the ball off where they still have 6 guys to block a somewhat alleviated box, right? Because you're using the formation, you're using the motion to try and dictate what your numbers. So there you see the 2 safeties bounce over. There's the 4 over 3 that we've seen multiple times. There's the run play. He chooses to go ahead and throw it. Now, this is a bad decision by the quarterback. What I think he sees is the corner back up. He sees, hey, the corner's not forcing this. He's not being aggressive. He backs up, so I'm going to throw it. But really, the execution is probably the biggest thing at fault here because you want to throw this ball. You want to teach your quarterbacks here, throw this ball into the line of scrimmage right to the upfield shoulder of the receiver.
So he can go get it as opposed to having to go back and get it.
Catch it going forward, get your shoulder square, and you'll notice the blocker is square. He is going to take on that defender and take him wherever he wants to go. Typically, that corner is going to be taught you have to go outside, force the ball back in. If that's the case, I'm going to try to stay square running to the sideline. If I can get outside leverage as the receiver, I'm going to. And then you teach the receiver here, as he catches it, to get vertical and to cut off that block. But your goal, what most of college football will tell you, and it's the way we tell our receivers, anytime we throw a fast screen like this, our goal is 4 yards right on the sidelines. If I get there, it's a win, right? When you run the ball, you want 3.3 yards a carry, minimum, right? Same thing. If I throw this screen, I want 4 yards or more. So he's either going to cut off his outside cheek and get to the sidelines to try to run, or if that guy is pushing wide to block, he's going to come and he's going to shave his inside cheek. He doesn't want to run straight up the field. He wants to chase his hip and then shave the inside cheek and now run to the sideline again to try and alleviate himself from all that pressure. But because he throws this ball back and it's not a well-executed throw, it gives the defense too much time to recover, and it ends up somehow being a 2-yard gain. It really should have been a loss. Truth is here, though, the quarterback should have handed this ball off because, again, you're looking at 6 guys to block 6 with 1 defensive back deep. to potentially defend the run. Again, they're not great up front. They don't particularly execute the run game element all that well, but numbers wise here, it dictates he should have handed this ball off. So I'll be curious to see, does Ole Miss invite them to run because they haven't shown a lot of prowess in the run game, right? Or does Ole Miss hedge their bets on athleticism outside, or do they just play their game and they mix and they match and they give them different looks and try to make them do a lot of different things? Kind of moving on. I said earlier, I expect to see a lot of bunches and stacks. Kittle, the offensive coordinator, or Kitley rather, the offensive coordinator, they love getting in these stacked formations. 2 receivers to each side. They will do a ton of things. They will tempo into these formations. We've seen Ole Miss play fast at times with a lot of tempo. Tech loves to do it, get into these stack sets and try to force you to dictate coverage. They used it a ton to get into their run game in this game. You go to the Oklahoma game, it's a lot more to get into some of their passing concepts. But they love to get into these sets. Here, they're running a traditional GT counter, which has been one of Ole Miss's biggest plays this year. The difference is, and I'm going to flip to the end zone real quick, okay, when Ole Miss runs this play, Jackson Dart's reading it. If Ole Miss is running this, he is going to read the defensive end with the opportunity to keep the ball. They're not concerned with reading the end. They're going to block the end because the quarterback, again, is not the threat to run the football. That's going to be the biggest difference, I think, in these 2 running games, assuming this is the quarterback that we get. But even if we see the Morton kid, I don't think you're going to see him. He's carried the ball more this year, but really not much more. I'm looking at the stats right now. He's actually carried it 5 times less than this quarterback has. Okay. Kind of going forward, again, getting into some kind of funky formations. They start out here with a wing and a tight end to the left, 2 receivers to the right. They motion that wing over. It's a 12-piece set. These are the things that we've talked about that have given Ole Miss fits because you've presented 7 guys at the line of scrimmage now for the defense to defend, and you're doing it with this 3-2 box. And so they're actually going to come out here and they're going to present this loaded box, this run-heavy, make the defense prepare to stop the run. And then what they actually do is they use it as a way to get themselves on the perimeter in the passing game. This is a concept that they get to a ton of different ways. Again, this is a 2nd and 12. So they want something that they're going to have a lot of confidence in. They're not trying to get the first down. They're trying to get half of it, get into a 3rd and manageable. So they're going to get into a sprint out smash right here where he's going to run a little outside release hitch. They're going to take the number 2 receiver. They're going to put him on a corner route. And all they're going to ask the quarterback to do, regardless of the action they use in the backfield, I've seen them do it off sprint out. I've seen them do it off bootleg. Quarterback's going to read the flat defender. If this corner bails to get to the deep route, he's going to get the ball out underneath before the linebacker can expand. And if that guy jumps this underneath route, then he's going to look to take the corner over the top. This, again, you think about, as an Ole Miss fan, if you go back to the LSU game, how many times did LSU have success throwing the ball into the flat? If Ole Miss plays with a similar scheme, I think you will see this type of concept several times against the Ole Miss defense. It's an easy read for the quarterback. He gets it out in rhythm. And one thing I will say is Tech has some size on the outside with their receivers, and they like those big bodies matched up on guys.
Yeah, he makes the catch, turns upfield, and gets yards.
Turns upfield, gets yards. And again, easy throw, easy concept. I've seen him do it off multiple motions, off of, again, play action, off a sprint out, but the read never changes. Boom, right there, get it out in a hurry. And wherever he throws this ball is where the receiver's taught to turn. If he catches this ball, if the ball is thrown in his outside shoulder, which is really here, then you expect the guy to turn outside. Ball's thrown on the inside shoulder, you expect him to turn inside. Here, I think because the ball's up, he feels the corner, and he goes ahead and tucks tight, turns away from him, and is able to, pick up a couple extra yards. But they very quickly go from 2nd and 12 into a very manageable 3rd down situation. Couple plays later, skipping forward. Okay. So, showed you earlier the 4 verticals concept. They ran on a 3rd and 8. This is on a 2nd and 9. And they're going to get to the same concept. They're going to find another way to do it. One thing they have done in this game prior to this point is they've lined up in empty formations with nobody in the backfield, and they have run essentially jet sweep. They've brought the slot receiver from the weak side across and gotten into some run game. So they're going to take that same run game that they've now shown out of empty, and they're going to mirror it with the same 4 verticals concept that we talked about earlier. So again, you're asking the defense, you're asking all, and the big thing you're really trying to do here is you're trying to see, will the secondary rotate and leave a void in coverage? But if you can get these underneath players attacking the run, you open up these windows in front of the safeties where you can attack with the football. So right here, when they get the motion, the backside safety stays put, and the front side safety just has his eyes on the run game long enough, and you see both linebackers, because they pull an offensive lineman to show the power read run game that they were running earlier. They just enough to freeze them, and there's the receiver right
There
down the hash.
Wide open.
If it's any better of a ball, he stays on his feet, he definitely scores right here. But again, it's taking these simple bedrock concepts that they do all the time, finding different ways to window dress and different ways.
Yeah, that was a well-designed play.
Well designed, and again, it's not creating, right? It's taking what you're going to consider your bread and butter, and it's just throwing another type of cheese on there. It's literally keep it as simple as we can, make it difficult on the defense, and that's what so many good offenses do. Now, just a couple more things to show you. Okay, one of the biggest things, because everybody started studying this offensive coordinator and the group that he was with at Western Kentucky after their success last year, and one of the biggest things I found when I studied them was their ability to use formations and do different things, but their creativity in the red zone is fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example right here. This two consecutive plays. This is immediately following the play that we just watched. They get a big play immediately. They're changing personnel, trying to stay in their tempo. Okay, so here's what's going on right here. We're going to block on the perimeter. The slot receiver to the right is going to come across like he's going across the formation, and then he is going to turn and sprint to the flat. Okay. There's a tight end on the right side. He is ineligible. He can, in theory, not go downfield. On a pass play, on a run play, he can. Okay. So to the front side here, they are going to send this running back to go block, just like he did earlier in the one of the run concepts we looked at. And they're going to block power, traditional, old school, tough nose power on the front side. The quarterback has 2 options, and I've given you a lot of lines on the screen now, so I'm going to erase a couple. He's got 2 options. He can either throw this little screen, this wall screen behind the line to the receiver in motion, or he can throw a shovel pass to this tight end that is coming behind the line of scrimmage. So they're giving him, it's just another version of triple option. Again, it's a play we've seen before. If you go back last season to the Ole Miss Arkansas game, Arkansas used almost the exact same play in the red zone late in that game against Ole Miss. So as I skip to the end zone here, okay, the quarterback is going to put his eyes on who's running with the receiver. So his number 1 starts in motion, who's coming with him. So now he's probably looking at this safety. That safety is the guy that they can't block. So if that safety comes down to take his receiver, he's got a shovel pass underneath to the tight end. If that safety goes anywhere else, he's going to dump it off to number 1 and give it to him. Boom, there they are. They're expanding. He can't throw it. They're outnumbered. So he's just going to turn. He's going to give it underneath to the tight end, and he's going to turn up and almost gets himself in the end zone. It gets him down to like the 1 yard line right there. But you can see the creative design. Get in a heavy formation. Do it with tempo. Try not to allow the defense to sub into a goal line personnel. Use motion. Move the quarterback. It's a great answer versus blitz because you can get the ball out right now if you've got pressure in your face. And if they don't blitz, it means they're expanding with that receiver, which means you get an easy underneath to your tight end. Okay. They don't score. So they come out the very next play. And I'm a big fan of what they tried to do right here. So the Philly special has been in fans' minds for several years now, right? We saw Philly in the Super Bowl several years ago, right, where the
Doug
quarterback walks off, Doug Peterson, right?
Yeah.
So what they're essentially going to do right here is they're going to fake the Philly special. So I'm going to go to the end zone. So here we go. They hop in. They have shown essentially 2 tight ends to the left with the receiver fairly close. Okay, the only receiver to the right is about 5 yards out, and the tailback's in the pistol. Quarterback is walking up just like on the Philly special, and he is trying to get everybody's attention. Hey, look at me. You know, I'm trying to act like you don't know what I'm doing, but you do. You see the defense isn't completely thrown off, but now they're pointing. Everybody's saying, hey, here it comes, here it comes. Now they snap it to the tailback. And if you remember on the Philly special, they snap it to the tailback. He goes left, gives it to a receiver on a reverse. The receiver throws it to the quarterback. So this type of action, this is the type of stuff defenses are having to walk through and work at some point during their season. So here they show the same look, but now the tailback doesn't give it. But he's done enough to freeze the backside of the defense that he's able to find a cutback and get himself into the end zone. So they're taking the scheme that they know defenses are having to, maybe they've shown the actual Philly special, but they don't have to because every defensive coordinator in the country at some point in 2 days has put this on film and walked through it on the practice field. So again, taking their base run, outside zone, they run outside zone 15 times a game maybe, right? Window dress it. Take what you do fairly well, make it look like something different, and you keep it really simple for your kids. And then, this is really the last one I want to show. And, this is talk about the roots being in the air raid. This is air raid as air raid gets. This has become a staple for Mike Leach over the past few years. And so to go from kind of where we were earlier to showing now, when you talk about how might they attack Ole Miss in the passing game, this is a 2nd and 10 right here. So they're going to start out 2 receivers on either side, and they are going to motion the slot receiver from the left. He's actually their tight end, and he's going to motion all the way across. Okay. So this is a variation of what's known as a stick concept. Okay. Traditional stick concept, the outside receiver would be working what's known as an MOR. It's a must outside release. Quarterback is only throwing that if he gets a matchup and it's man-to-man. The inside receiver is typically running a stick route. And in the normal progression, the third receiver is working a flat route. One of the ways that Leach popularized running this concept in recent years was making it a 4-man concept. So what he does now is there's a post over the top. The motion man, instead of running in the flat now, runs a wheel route. The stick receiver still runs a stick, but he's pushing it deeper. Normal stick used to be at about 5 yards. He's going to run this thing to about 8. And now the tailback is going to be in the flat as fast as he can. So what he's essentially done is built a 3-level read for the quarterback. If the safety drives down and attacks the stick, you can replace him over the top with the post. If the safety stays over the top and stays over top the stick route, you have the stick route underneath it. And if the linebacker drops underneath the stick route and takes away the stick route, you've created the 3rd layer in your scheme with the flat route. So it is a very simple. He is only looking at that post route if there is not a safety that is aligned to take it away pre-snap.
So how do you defend this? Because it looks to me like no matter, as long as the quarterback reads the safety and the linebacker correctly, this is going to be a positive play, period.
Everything can be defended, right? But everything can also win on the score, like on the whiteboard. Whoever holds the marker last wins. So here, if you're Iowa State, okay, what a lot of people would probably do against this type, and again, part of it is, do I have a blitz called? Because if I have a blitz called, it's going to affect my coverage checks. If I don't have a blitz called, what most people are going to do is you're going to get some type of a rotation from the secondary. So here, the middle safety is bumping guys over, which probably means that this guy is going to now be able to go to the flat with the back. What you hope offensively is that guy first doesn't see the tailback and instead runs with the wheel, which leaves you a tailback wide open in the flat. But in theory, he goes to the flat. One of these two defenders, probably the inside safety, ends up here. He ends up deep. He ends up deep. And you now sort it out, gaining a fifth guy from the inside. So this safety structure, the 3-2-6 alignment, actually plays itself out versus this type of concept. But again, it's the chess match of, am I in the right coverage? You can see right here what happens is, just like I said, what you hope is that linebacker that's expanding, you want him to run with the wheel. That's exactly what he does. So when he runs with the wheel, clicked. When that guy runs with the wheel, if neither of safety comes down to take the stick route, and here they both stay deep, the stick is wide open. Yep. If either safety adds himself to the fit, so there's a couple ways you can do it, right? He can lock on, stay the curl player, and you now rotate over the top. Again, you build a box with your coverage, your sound, okay? You can rotate safety down to the flat, leave, actually be the outside safety, rotate the outside safety down to the flat, play deep with the middle safety, and now leave him on the stick. Again, you build a four-man box with a fifth guy coming, or you expand, bring him down into what they call buzz, okay, and now play deep with those two. So in theory, there's a lot of ways you can get to the landmarks you need to be in to defend it, but you use motion, you play with tempo, and you run it so much. I mean, look at the receiver. He knows right now. You can see the receiver. He sees that linebacker expanding, and he knows I can't go too deep. He is right now shutting his route down and expecting the ball. And honestly, this ball is out late, right? Mike Leach, if you go watch Rodgers do this at Mississippi State, that ball is probably moving now. That ball's already out of his hand. And that's just, it's reps, it's timing, it's experience in the offense. But regardless, this is the third or this is the second time I've shown you a second and long clip. Both times, what have they done? They've tried to get into third and manageable. They don't want to be in third and long.
Yeah, because he gets 7-8 yards here and sets up a third and 3, third and 2.
Third and manageable, right? So I showed you the sprint out earlier into the smash concept where they hit the flat, showed you the stick concept right here. So I do think what he has shown as a coordinator, not only this year at Tech, but last year at Western Kentucky, and I'm sure before that as well, is if you get aggressive, he will be aggressive. He has tricks in his bag to be aggressive. And he's certainly going to tempo and take shots and do certain things. But he's also going to play a brand of football that's built towards giving his kids success. You get him in second and long, he's not overly likely to run the football unless he feels really confident about it. So now you're talking screen, you're talking quick game, sprint out, things that get him into third manageable, because he knows right now as an offense, they're not built to live in third and long.
Should absolutely be an interesting game. Again, Ole Miss, Texas Tech in the Tax Act Texas Bowl, NRG Stadium in Houston, December 28th, 8 p.m. Pete, it's been a hell of a lot of fun this fall. Appreciate you doing it. It's been easily the most successful video content item that we do. It's not even close. And we do some other pretty good video content items, I think. And this one blows all of that away. People love it. They love you. They appreciate the insight, the way you've taught the game over the course of, I don't know, what's it been, 14 or so weeks
Yeah.
of the show. So Merry Christmas to you, to your family,
Thank
to your
you.
little girl. I hope Santa Claus comes and spends some time at the Deweese house. I have a feeling that he will.
Santa has already spent money and he will be spending time. So
Well, that's good. That is good. So uh, happy holidays to you. Merry Christmas to you and your family. Thanks so very much for doing this over the course of the year. And also thanks to the people at Walk-Ons Sports Bistro, especially in Oxford and Ridgeland, but Walk-Ons everywhere. Walk-Ons Sports Bistro, bringing you everything they've got with the taste of Louisiana, 40 plus ice cold beers on tap, lots of TVs. If you are looking to get out of the house, watch some of the bowl games, whether it's the Texas Bowl or any other bowl, stop at Walk-Ons, have a beer, have an appetizer, a dinner, and tell the people there how much you appreciate them sponsoring Pete's Pigskin Preview over the course of the 2022 season. Pete, we haven't talked about this, but I certainly hope we do it again next fall.
I look forward to it. I appreciate you. I appreciate Walk-Ons and all the people that make this possible. I know I enjoy getting feedback from the fans. I know people that I pick up Twitter followers every week. I think they're probably disappointed afterwards, but I pick up a couple every week, and I enjoy hearing back from people. So please, it's great to be a part of something. You guys do a great job. You put out so many great products. I listen to what I can when I can, and I always enjoy what you guys do. And so to be a part of that, I appreciate you having me in. And I certainly hope that we can continue to inform and entertain a little bit moving forward.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Thanks again so much. Enjoyed the season. Again, Merry Christmas to you and your family, to everybody that's listening. We'll have post-game coverage of some form. The game's not going to end till midnight. I don't know exactly what that post-game coverage is going to look like, but it will look like something at rebelgrove.com. And then we'll have a postseason show. Might even see if we can get Pete to be a part of it. Postseason show sometime in the day or two after the Texas Bowl. We're not going to do a post-game show at 1 a.m. That's just nonsensical. We'll do something substantive and good and reflective of the bowl game and the season as a whole sometime in the day or two after that. So again, Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year, and we will talk to you again soon.